The person who always puts others first. You cancel your plans to help someone else with theirs. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You check in on everyone around you. But when someone asks how you are doing, you give them the short answer. The safe answer. The one that does not make them worry. You are the person people call when things fall apart. The one who shows up every time without being asked twice. And you do it genuinely. You do it because you care. Because making things easier for the people you love feels like the most natural thing in the world. But somewhere underneath all of that giving, there is a tiredness that you cannot quite name. A quiet resentment you feel guilty for feeling. A longing for someone to show up for you the way you show up for everyone else. And a small, persistent voice that wonders, if you stopped being so giving, would anyone still be there? This video is about that person and the hidden cost of always putting everyone else first. Part 1. How they got this way. Nobody decides one day to become the person who always puts others first. It happens gradually, and it almost always starts early. For many people who grow up to be chronic givers, there was a reason in childhood to make other people's needs more important than their own. Maybe they grew up in a home where the emotional climate depended on keeping someone else happy. A parent whose moods were unpredictable. A household where conflict was always one wrong word away. A family where love felt conditional. Where being good, being helpful, being easy was the price of feeling safe. And so they learned. They learned to read the room before entering it. They learned to shrink their own needs so there was more space for everyone else's. They learned that taking care of others felt safer than asking to be taken care of. And it worked. People liked them. People relied on them. People called them the good one, the dependable one, the one you could always count on. And that felt like love. So they kept doing it, long after the original reason had passed. Long after they had grown up and left and built a different life, the habit stayed. Because, somewhere deep down, they still believed that their value to the people around them depended on what they could do for them. Part 2. The many faces of the giver. People who always put others first do not all look the same. Some of them are visibly nurturing, the caretaker, the one who remembers everyone's birthdays, who brings food when someone is sick, who checks in without being asked. They give through action, through presence, through showing up in all the small ways that add up to something enormous over time. Some of them give through silence. They are the ones who swallow their discomfort so others do not have to feel uncomfortable, who stay in situations that do not serve them because leaving would inconvenience someone else, who hold their tongue when they should speak. To protect the peace, they give through disappearing, and some of them give through endless availability. They are always reachable, always ready to listen, always willing to rearrange their day, their plans, their rest, to accommodate someone else's need. Their time is everyone's time, except their own. But underneath all these different expressions, there is the same core belief. My needs matter less than yours. And that belief, no matter how quietly it sits, shapes everything. Part 3. What they never say out loud. Here is what the person who always puts others first never says out loud. I am exhausted. Not tired in the way that a good night's sleep fixes. Exhausted in the way that comes from years of giving more than you receive, of being strong for everyone else while quietly falling apart on the inside. They never say, I feel invisible. Because how can you feel invisible when everyone seems to need you? When your phone is always ringing and people always seem glad to see you? But being needed is not the same as being seen. People need what you do for them. But do they know who you are when you are not doing anything for anyone? They never say, I am angry. Because good givers are not supposed to be angry. They chose this. They love these people. What right do they have to resent the very thing they keep offering? So the anger goes inward. It turns into guilt, into self-criticism, into the quiet feeling that something is wrong with them for feeling this way. And they never say the thing that sits underneath all of it. I need someone to take care of me for a change. Because saying that out loud feels selfish. And selfish is the one thing they have spent their entire life trying not to be. Part 4. The relationships they end up in. Here is a pattern that appears again and again in the lives of people who always put others first. They attract takers, not always malicious ones, not always people who are consciously exploiting their generosity, but people who, whether by nature or by habit, are comfortable receiving more than they give, and the fit feels familiar. Because the giver knows this dynamic, they grew up in it. It feels like love to them because it is what love looked like in the beginning. So they give and give, hoping that eventually the other person will notice, will reciprocate, will see how much is being poured out, and start to pour back. But that moment rarely comes, because the taker is not withholding out of cruelty. They simply do not have the same instinct. They do not notice the imbalance, because the giver never shows it. The giver smiles. The giver says it is fine. The giver keeps showing up, and the taker keeps receiving, until the giver is empty. And then one of two things happens. Either the giver finally says something, and the taker is genuinely surprised because they had no idea, or the giver quietly disappears. No argument, no confrontation, just gone. Because they ran out of energy to keep pretending the dynamic was okay. Part 5. What it costs them. The cost of always putting others first is rarely visible from the outside, because the person paying it has gotten very good at hiding the invoice. It costs them their health. Research consistently shows that people who suppress their own needs and chronically prioritize others show higher rates of stress, anxiety, and physical illness. The body keeps a record of everything the mind agrees to endure. It costs them their identity. When you spend enough time being what everyone else needs you to be, you can lose track of who you actually are, what you actually want. What would make you happy if no one else's happiness was in the equation? Some chronic givers reach a point where someone asks them what they enjoy, and they genuinely do not know, because they have not asked themselves that question in years. It costs them real intimacy, because true intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires letting someone else see your need, your weakness, your struggle, and the person who always puts others first has built their entire identity around not needing, so they stay behind the glass, giving, caring, showing up, but never fully letting anyone in. And it costs them themselves. The slow, quiet erosion of a person who kept giving pieces of themselves away, until one day they looked in the mirror and barely recognized who was looking back. Part 6. The hardest thing they will ever do. The hardest thing for a chronic giver to learn is not how to give better. It is how to receive. How to say, I need help, without immediately minimizing it. How to let someone show up for them without redirecting the conversation back to the other person. How to sit with someone's care, without feeling like a burden. How to say no without a paragraph of justification and a week of guilt. These things feel unnatural. Sometimes they feel physically uncomfortable, because the nervous system of a lifelong giver has been trained to associate their own needs with danger. Needing meant being too much. Needing meant risking rejection. Needing meant potentially losing the love that was only ever offered in exchange for giving. So receiving feels terrifying, even when it is safe. Even when the person offering care is genuine. Even when it is exactly what they need. Relearning how to receive is one of the bravest things a chronic giver can do. Not because it is dramatic, but because it goes against every instinct they spent a lifetime building. The reframe. If you are someone who always puts others first, I want to ask you something. When was the last time someone asked how you were doing, and you told them the truth? Not the short answer, not the fine, not the redirect back to them. The actual truth. When was the last time you let yourself need something without apologizing for it? When was the last time you were the one who was taken care of? You have spent so long being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds everything together. But strength was never meant to be a solo performance. You are allowed to put down what you are carrying sometimes. You are allowed to be the one who needs something. You are allowed to take up space in the lives of the people you love, not just as the person who gives, but as a person who sometimes needs to receive. Your needs are not an inconvenience. Your exhaustion is not a weakness. And wanting to be cared for after a lifetime of caring for everyone else is not selfish. It is human. You have given so much of yourself to so many people for so long. It is time to give a little of that back to yourself. Not someday. Now. You have earned it more than you know.